With world-class expertise and local insight, Dexus creates value, not just for today, but long into tomorrow.
From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Well, hello on this Monday afternoon. Wonderful to be here with you. I'm Nadine Blaney, and just past 4 p.m. here in Sydney. So we have the COB Australia Index done and dusted, down by about 0.2%. So look, it was just a bit of a lackluster day. There are still concerns around tariffs. We heard that Donald Trump, the US president, is talking about 50% tariffs on steel and aluminium. Now, that did have a beneficiary here locally, which we'll get to in just a moment, but safe to say, a negative start to this brand new trading month. Plenty of analysis up online as to why we didn't sell in May and go away. I had a great chat with Elise Mackay, who is from Pendle earlier on, just gave us the lay of the land and talked about how Australia is actually looking relatively good, particularly in comparison to what we're getting out of the United States. But the day started, of course, with that really big news about Brickworks and Washington H. Soul Patts coming together. So I guess back to the future in a way. The dual sort of structure, the co-shareholding, has been in place since 1969. Well, today they decided to create a $14 billion company that will actually become one of the 50 top companies on the ASX. We've also, as I said, got a bit of consternation around the tariff landscape once again. Though BlueScope was a beneficiary, of course, it does have US operations, so that could be a boon for that company. And as we mentioned, the ASX retreating. We have seen US futures coming under pressure throughout the day today. S&P 500 and NASDAQ E-minis looking pretty weak. Interesting to see the oil price rising, but the energy sector actually one of the worst performing sectors of the day today. In fact, it is the worst performing sector of the day. 8 out of the 11 sectors have been, are negative at this time. We've still got the last of the day's trades going through the ASX, but you can see there Westpac is the exception to the rule in the banks. So CBA off by about 0.25%. Taking a look at the REITs, I had a really great chat with Morningstar today about their undervalued pick in the office space. So you can check that interview out online at ausbiz.com.au. It's with Winky Tan, and in fact, we'll put it in the COB newsletter. If you don't receive the COB newsletter, I really think you should. You can sign up at ausbiz.co/newsletter. It's just wham, bam, wrap of the day, plus a link to some of our key interviews as well. So there are the REITs, energy, as I mentioned, coming under a lot of pressure. OPEC Plus keeping those production increases in line for July as they have put in place for June. So weighing on the market there overall. There's Washington H. Soul Patts and Brickworks shares absolutely flying today after that merger agreement. The companies say that shareholders will benefit from the significantly increased scale of the business and the simplification of that existing cross-shareholding. James Hardie has secured a $3.5 billion credit line to fund its U.S. deal. Firetrail Resources secured an option to buy U.S. gold projects, and Parenti in the smaller end has inked a $1.1 billion contract with Endeavour Mining in Burkina Faso. Iris, by the way, has completed the sale of its superannuation business to Apex Group. Audinate has fallen, down by 2.4%. The chairman is retiring. And DXN has jumped on a $3 million data center contract. Wow, that's punchy, up by close to 31%. Not familiar with the company myself. Let's find out what Henry Jennings from Marcus Today has had his eye on today. Was it any of those aforementioned companies? I guess Brickworks is pretty hard to look past, up by 26%.
Yeah, hi Nadine. Brickworks and the Soul Pattersons, very, very hard to go past today on what was a pretty quiet day, I have to say. Apart from that, there wouldn't have been an awful lot going on. And once again, trading in quite a narrow range. And to some extent, some of the window dressing that we did see on Friday being the end of the month, being unwound today. The lithium sector in particular getting absolutely poleaxed today. We did see that UBS broker downgrade last week, and that really has fed through into the likes of Mineral Resources, which is down over 11%, Pilbara over 7%. So it has been Soul Patts and Brickworks. They've finally been able to untie that Gordian knot, which has plagued, I guess, and confounded many investment banks for some years. This cross shareholding was put in place in 1969, so it is 56 years young in terms of this cross shareholding, and originally put in place to see off some of the predators that were around at the time and continued through the 80s as well. So it's good to see it being unwound now, and of course the 2 plus 2, the sum of the parts, is certainly worth more than it was on Friday when there were two separate companies effectively. So, a big tick of approval from the market. This deal has been on again, off again, and tried many times, but now it looks as if it's going to be successful.
So BlueScope's strategy to open North Star in the United States certainly seems to be paying off, at least today, with Trump threatening higher steel tariffs. I mean, is that a reason to own BlueScope in your mind? If the U.S. brings manufacturing back home and they can get homegrown steel, I mean, it sounds attractive.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It sounds very attractive. BlueScope, obviously one of the beneficiaries because of that North Star activity in in the US, the manufacturing capability. I guess the problem is for the US is that if US steel becomes 50% more expensive to import, that is going to add to the cost pressures in construction, into car manufacturing, into inflation, and US steel coming out of the sort of the soon to be, whatever you're going to call it, merger between US Steel and Nippon is going to be is pretty expensive in the first place. So it's going to take a little while for any benefits to come to the US from this increased tariff. So, and there's always the courts to come as well. So BlueScope, yes, it's had a good day today. It certainly has been one of the big beneficiaries of that move. But whether that move will stick remains to be seen. Of course, it could get even worse, couldn't it? Donald Trump could decide 50% is not enough, 75%, let's go 100%, who knows? But certainly, the steel that is manufactured in the US by US Steel is expensive, so it is going to add to the inflationary outlook, I guess, and that's why we've seen gold up and the US futures down to some extent.
Yeah, okay. It's just fascinating. I was reading a note from Jonathan Payne from the Payne Report, just talking about the fact that with these court cases, the narrative hasn't changed, as in, markets will still be volatile. While we have all of this uncertainty out there, add to that geopolitics, and what kind of a recipe, in your view, does that make for investors right now, Henry?
I think complicated, and it's always been complicated. I think it's always going to be complicated with Donald Trump and his administration, but there's no doubt that he's going to push ahead with the tariffs and he will get them up by hook or by crook. Unfortunately, we've now seen a little bit of a war of words breaking out between China and the US as well, in terms of chips, in terms of rare earth supply, and China dragging its feet, which isn't a particularly good outlook, I guess. We've still got tariffs at 30% on China. Everyone's hailing this wonderful sort of détente, but it's gone from 145 to 30. 145 was basically an embargo. 30% is still a massive, massive tariff. 20% of that is fentanyl. But certainly, I think this is something that we're going to have to get used to. And of course, that 90-day deadline when everything got pushed back from the initial Liberation Day to the beginning of July, we're in June now. So we're not far away from having sort of crunch time again, in which, traditionally the US and the UK, etc., Northern Hemisphere summer is a little bit of a quieter time. People's thoughts turn to holidays. So and June can be quite a quiet and flat month. So I'm expecting no real change to that, I guess, as we start to head towards that July deadline. And hopefully we'll get some deals from Europe, but 50% steel tariffs, that's not going to help the situation. And hopefully we'll get some more progress on China. But again, the recent talk is not going to help the situation. So I think we're going to be volatile. I think it's going to be complicated. But Donald Trump, for sure, is going to keep pushing ahead by hook or by crook to get these tariffs up, especially as if without them, it does leave a big hole in the US budget, which, if he puts through the big bank or the big tax bill, the big, beautiful tax bill, that hole somewhat needs to be filled by something, and tariffs are a way to fill some of that hole.
Yeah. big holes, big beautiful,
holes.
big,
Holes.
big beautiful holes.
Big,
All right.
beautiful, $37 trillion worth of holes. Bigger potholes than we've got on the northern beaches at the moment.
Yeah, I shouldn't joke. All right. So
No.
when we are thinking about June, what are we thinking? Because we've had the Macquarie conference done and dusted.
Yeah.
So we've had this mini confession season. We're now looking forward to results, but they don't come through until August. So yeah, what sort of no man's land are we in? Because things get awfully quiet in the States as well once the summer holidays kick in.
Yeah, we are in a bit of no man's land, I have to say, Nadine. And of course, we're coming into the end of the financial year as well here. So those tax loss sort of strategies will come into play. And there's certainly been some dogs this year. It has been, a year of the dogs, if you like. And, we've seen that today with the likes of, mineral resources, $19.50 odd today. Latin resources, not Latin, Liontown rather. Pilbara, the lithium space is prime candidates there, I guess. And there has been a lot of casualties this year, some superstar stocks as well. But I would imagine that we're going to see some tax loss selling continuing, maybe some window dressing in places as well as we head into the end of the month. But I think generally it's going to be a quieter month. We can't have the sort of the May that we've had every month. It was a pretty stupendous May, even for the Australian market, stuck in our backwater. We were still up 3.8%, which is pretty good considering that usually sell in May and go away is the mantra. This year it's a buy in May or rue the day more than anything else. So I think we're probably in for a little bit of a quiet time, especially as we head into those July deadlines for those tariffs. They may be extended again, but I suspect we will see a little bit of end of year fiddling around, quieter summer heading into the UK and the Northern Hemisphere and the US, of course, and a little bit of flatlining maybe for all the markets, just to play a little bit of catch up after the run we've had. That V-shaped bounce has been quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it really has. Okay. Look, Henry, it's a pleasure to have you joining us on the COB as always. And just to let you know, the investment committee will be published. I think it'll be running right after this program, in fact. So, yeah, I know. Back by popular demand. All right, Henry Jennings, Markets Today. Have a good one. And just to get another couple of opinions, actually, on the Washington Soul Patts Brickworks merger, mega merger, I've been calling it. Nathan Somasundaram from Deep Data Analytics, also a member of the investment committee. And Kai Chen from MPC Markets joined us a bit earlier.
I mean, if you've been there, you've done well. You've been given a freebie into a financial year end. Enjoy the ride, take the money and go. I mean, there's shorts on both of these stocks are like 1 to 2%, so it's irrelevant. They're the ones probably getting covered today. But apart from that, I don't think there's really a catalyst. It's the macro cycle. And I think it's still tough out there. But look, it's one of those, both of these are considered a listed private equity businesses. They're really good businesses for the long term. Put it together, it's a really good business. So I would say if you've been in both, you're probably now going to hold a big chunk of one. So you're probably going to downsize.
Definitely a solid, very well managed company, that's for sure. And I think Soul Patts shareholders got the better end of the stick. So after post-merger, the structure, the Soul Pattinson holders get 72% of that merged entity, whilst Brickworks gets about 19% and the new investors, which they raised about 500 mil for the remainder. In terms of, it's a very logical merger. I don't think anyone is surprised that this was put on the table with so much cross shareholdings. And I think as a consolidated entity, of course, like Nathan said, it's a strong company, both are well run.
Yeah, it appears that it's happy days for Brickworks shareholders, and that brings us nicely to the market leaders. Check it out, Brickworks up by close to 27%, Soul Patts up by 16%, so making one of the biggest companies in the country once and if it does go through. Shouldn't presume anything, but the board of both companies is recommending this go through, and yeah, the market's kind of voting with its feet today, right? BlueScope, we spoke with Henry about that one, to $23.92. Generation Development Group, it did have a broker lifting its price target on the company. It's Morgan's, lifting the price target 15% to $6.04 per share. And there's Evolution Mining. We saw gold prices rising, jitters on the tariff scene, pushing Gold higher again. And now we've got some of the laggards being Clarity Pharmaceuticals. Liontown Resources, we did see it downgraded to sell from neutral by UBS. Price target cut 23% to 50 cents per share. Light & Wonder, $133.48 at our 3 Stocks 4 event. Junbei Liu from 10Cap had that as one of her key picks. All right, let's get to what's happening overnight. Oh, here we go. Small to mid-size part of the market. Dateline Resources up by 63%. Resimac as well up by 13%. Flipping the page, some of the laggards. Coronado, so out with an update, still looking to cut costs and refinancing to give it a bit more flexibility. Still not helping the share price, off by close to 17% to 10 cents per share. I was chomping at the bit to bring you this. What's happening overnight? U.S. construction spending in April could lift about 0.4%. Westpac is tipping the U.S. ISM manufacturing index for May to fall. We also get the European manufacturing PMI. And tomorrow here, we get the China Caixin manufacturing index, which is expected to lift just slightly to 50.8 from 50.4. We also get the balance of payments for the March quarter and the RBA meeting minutes, which come through at 11:30. Elders will be trading ex-div as well. We've got a big week, though, on the economic front. We do have an ECB meeting, we have a BOC meeting, we have U.S. non-farm payrolls on Friday, so plenty to keep us occupied on the macro front. We're also keenly watching geopolitics through the overnight period. We've got a Ukrainian delegation arriving in Istanbul to speak with Russia. That comes after Ukraine did take on Russia in its own territory. So yeah, geopolitics always front of mind. And of course, we'll be keeping our eye on tariffs. And look, you know, is this the dog that didn't bark? So that's the question from Sherlock Holmes fans, given the utter lack of market reaction to U.S. President Donald Trump's threatened doubling of steel and aluminium tariffs to 50%. So yeah, I guess that taco trade is at play to a certain degree. So we will also hear from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He will be making some opening remarks at an international finance conference. So I guess we can't expect anything too crazy. UK house prices as well are due. So the final finish for the CIBO Australia Index is off by 0.2%. And as we take a look at what's happening for the S&P ASX 200, down by 0.25% to 8,414. Look, it's been a pleasure to be with you throughout the day today. If you've missed any of our wonderful interviews, you can access them via the newsletter, which I've already said you should sign up for, ausbiz.co/newsletter, or you can check it out online, ausbiz.com.au. Stay with us.